Hello and welcome to Flipbook Episode 2, Principles of Animation. I'm Deith Elza with the Richmond Public Library. If you missed Episode 1, there's a link to it in the description below, and there's also a link to the Shimmy animation program that we'll be using, which runs right in your web browser. Shimmy is developed by the Richmond Public Library to be an easy-to-use tool for making flipbook-style animations. We'd love to hear what you think about it. So if you have any comments on the videos, on these videos, or on the Shimmy tool itself, please use the link in the description to give us feedback. In the previous episode, I said you could use the YouTube comments to give us feedback, but it turns out that for videos made for kids, YouTube turns off the comments, so that won't work. So please do use the link to the form on the library website to let us know what you think, what you'd like to see more of, any problems you have with the Shimmy tool, or anything you've liked from these videos. Alright, so let's get started. In the previous episode, we introduced Shimmy and how to use it, and we left off with an exercise for you to do on your own. To draw two things, and then animate one of those things turning into the other. So I also did this exercise, and let's see how that turned out. So I chose two pretty simple things for my animation, a flower and a house. There were two of the things I suggested last week, so you may have picked the same ones. Or you may have used other things. You could go simpler, you could animate a triangle changing into a square. More complex, you could have a shoe turn into a cat. Any two things. The main thing is just that you're comfortable drawing both of them, and that you have fun with it. Now I'm not going to show you the whole process of creating my animation, because this video would be way too long. But I will show you the animation and step you through how I did it. So I used the back and next frame buttons a lot to check that I was moving from one to the other. I used onion skin to make sure each new frame was close to the previous one. I used the undo button a lot whenever I made a line that didn't go right. So let's take a look at this. I started with just two frames. On one I drew this flower, and on another I drew this house. You can see I'm not the greatest artist in the world. I can't draw a straight line or a circle to save my life, especially with a mouse. But that's okay, because the main thing isn't that we draw perfect art. The main thing is that we express ourselves and that we're having fun. So if I can do this, anybody can do this. All right. So when I was thinking, how do I turn a flower into a house? They don't look anything alike. But I'm going to take different parts of them and have each of those parts turn into a part of the other. So how many parts are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. There's this circle in the middle. There's a stem. That's 7, 8, 9 for the leaves, and then the ground is 10. And, well, hey, the house has a ground too, so that could stay the same. So I've got 9 things that need to change. I've got wall, roof, wall, chimney, that's 5, windows 6, 7, door 8, doorknob, that's 9. I've got 9 things for the house and 9 things for the flower. I didn't even really plan it that way, but it worked out, and with a little bit of effort you can plan it too. But you can also have, like if I'd had 10 things in the house and 9 things in the flower, I could, for instance, have one of the petals split into 2, and then each of those pieces becomes part of the house. But here's what my plan. I'm going to take this petal and turn it into the left part of the roof, and this petal and turn it into the right part of the roof, and then this petal is going to become the chimney. This petal will be the left wall. No, this petal will become the left window. This petal will become the right window. The stem is going to stay right where it is and then grow and over and down and become the door. This leaf will become the left wall. This leaf will become the right wall. The ground will stay basically the same, and the circle will stay a circle, but it'll shrink and drop down and become the doorknob. So that's what I'm going to do. I took 22 frames to get, so 20 frames in between the flower and the house. So let's see what that looks like. So if we go next and turn on onion skinning, we can see I haven't changed a whole lot. Like the leaves are still down here. The petals are still up here. But if I turn off onion skin, you can see the leaves have all detached. Everything's moving away, starting to drift. So the petals have all detached from the flower, and they're going to start changing. And I took two different approaches for turning the petals into the roof. This petal is going to flatten out into a line, and this petal is going to open up and straighten out into a line. And so you can see, if I keep going, this petal is becoming a little more flat, more like a line. This one's opening up more. These two petals are going to become windows, so they're slowly going to turn into squares or rectangles. And this is going to float over to the right and settle down as the chimney. So if we keep going, okay, we're making a little more progress. This is starting to look a little more chimney-like. This is opening up to become a line. These are going to become windows, and you can see the stem now is moving over as it starts to become the door. So here we go a little bit more. The circle has been shrinking. It hasn't started really dropping down yet. And this circle is actually taking a while to open up and straighten out. It probably would have been quicker for my purposes to have both circles collapse into a line, but that's okay. We can take a few more frames. This one petal is already looking a little more like a window. This petal's getting there. The door's moving over a little bit more. We've got our leaves have turned into lines to go drift over and make the wall. And now it looks like we've got two windows. This is clearly starting to become the chimney. We have a line for the roof, but it's not in the right place yet. This one hasn't become a line yet. It hasn't straightened out yet. So we just keep going. And if we turn on onion skinning, you can see each one moves just a little from the last time. You can see the circle is moving over a little bit, drifting into place where it's going to be the doorknob. So it's super important to use that onion skinning when you're actually drawing these. And if you find you make a mistake, I had a few times where I forgot to draw the ground, or I forgot to put a window, or I looked and the window was way off from where it should be. You can go back. Each frame has its own undo stack, so you can go back to a frame and undo the last line you did. You can also draw in any that you missed. I went back and redid lines sometimes 6 or 7 times before I got it to go the way I wanted for that frame. And I was not only using onion skin, which shows the previous frame, but then I would click next to see the house and then compare, just click next and back real quick. We don't have onion skinning for the next frame. Might be a nice feature to add. But clicking next and back, you can kind of see if things are more or less in the right place. That gets more critical as you get closer to done. As these pieces start to move into the places they should be in the house, you want to actually make sure they're in the right place, right size, all of that. You keep going, and you can see the windows are kind of window-like now. They're getting close to the right place. The walls are drifting to where they need to be. This piece of roof is already basically where it needs to be. The chimney is coming down to meet it. This curve still needs to flatten out a lot, and the doorknob has a long ways to go. So the door is growing. The windows are moving into position. Keep going here. Now we're almost halfway. We can see the chimney really starting to get to its more or less final form, getting close to joining onto the roof. This wall is close to position. This wall has a long ways to go still. We've almost gotten this curve straight for the roof. There. Now we've got all our lines more or less straight. You can even kind of see the house there now. And as we keep going, the door still needs to come down on the right. The walls still need to get into the right places, but you can definitely see that it's starting to come together. Okay, that was an abrupt change. This whole line came down at once. I probably should have done that over a few frames. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. And then one of the things that happened with this right-hand wall is, as I was animating it, I actually was making it too straight because in the house I drew, this wall was horrible. It was so crooked and wavy. So I had to go and the last couple frames of animation, it has to get a little bit more, a little less straight. So you may run into some problems like that. It's all good. You could probably even, I mean, I could have just fixed the line in the original house, but I wanted to keep the drawings that I started with and really work on animating everything in between. So here we've got a house, we've got windows, door. Basically, the positions need a little bit of adjustment, and the doorknob needs to come down and get into place. So here we go. We've got about 5 frames left. So everything is tightening up. At this point, I was jumping back and forth between the final house and this a lot with the back and next button, and really making sure the lines are kind of moving into the right places. And see here, I've started curving that wall again, and now there's the original house. So if you look at the last 2 frames, you can see I got pretty close. And now, once we've done that whole animation, we can even add on a little bit. We can say, add a little flair. So we've changed from a flower to a house. I'm going to copy that. And so now I have a new frame of that original house. And I'm just going to add, pen size is good. I'm going to add a little bit of smoke coming out of the chimney. And a little something growing here. And now I'm going to copy and make that smoke go up a little more. This grows a little more. Copy. Smoke rises. And this. Can you guess what I'm doing here? Copy. Yeah, that's going to be a flower. Now if we wanted to, we could actually make this flower. We could zoom into it using the zoom in, zoom out tools, or the zoom in tool, and start animating it into a house again. It could be a loop where you have a house and a flower grows, and you zoom into the flower and it turns into a house and a flower grows. I'm not going to go that far, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of flash. Now, we haven't actually animated, like watched this as an animation. We've just kind of gone through it slowly with the next and back buttons to see, so you can kind of slowly see the animation that way. But let's go ahead and use the animate button. There we go. I think that turned out pretty good. So from a flower into a house. And so for whatever animations you do, once you've got that finished, make sure you save it so you can work on it later if you want to, or reload it. You can add color, anything you want. And then you can save it as an animated GIF and send it to, or GIF, and send it to your friends. Show your parents what you have created in here. Awesome. So now that we've reviewed last week's project, let's start looking at the principles of animation. So the 12 principles of animation are something that grew out of work at Disney, and they were introduced to the world in the 1981 book, The Illusion of Life, Disney Animation. I've linked in the description to the Wikipedia page. There are 12 principles, as I said, and some of them lend themselves to our flipbook-style animation more than others. The Wikipedia page does a good job of introducing them, but of course if you'd like to read the book itself, you can check it out from the library, and I've included a link to it here at the Richmond Public Library, so if you have a library card with us, you can go ahead and place a hold right there, and we will let you know when it comes in. If you have a library card with a different library system, of course, you can probably get it from them as well. So, The other thing I've linked to in the description is this page, which has short animations, each illustrating one of the 12 principles, which I find really useful, both to help me understand what the principle is about and how it works, and also how I would incorporate it in my own animations. So there are two of these principles that I want to pay special attention to today, and how to work them into our own animation. The first is squash and stretch. Now, in the previous episode, we drew a bouncing ball. We made an animation of a bouncing ball, and we did that by copying a single frame of a ball and then just using the move tool to move it a certain amount between frames. And so we're going to do something very similar today, but we're going to draw the ball in each frame. And once we've done that, we've kind of recreated the animation from the previous episode, then we will apply the squash and stretch principle. And so on this illustration to the right, if you imagine each ball is a separate frame of an animation, you can see this first one is basically what we did last week. The ball is always moving the same amount, it's always round, and it just has this simple bounce. And now here, we've got squash and stretch going on, so the ball becomes elongated as it's falling, both to show movement and to show the stretchiness of the ball. So that's the squash, and then it hits the ground and flattens out. So it squashes down, then it stretches out again as it bounces to become more elongated and kind of wobbling back and forth. So as it gets to the top of its arc here, it's back to being round. And so that when you show those frames in sequence, it really gives it a much more interesting look than the simple one where we just have the ball always round consistently. The second principle that we want to look at today is somewhere here, timing. So timing has to do with how many drawings there are for a given action. So how many frames the action takes place over. And what that means is, we can use this same illustration. In last episode's animation, the ball always moved the same amount in each frame. And that's not really how something would fall. So when something falls, it starts off falling slowly and accelerates as it goes down. So the way we show that in animation is we have more distance between each frame, between the object in each frame, to show that it's going faster. Because when we play it back, it will be faster. And so here you see the ball consistent, always moving at the same rate. And here it starts off slow, gets faster, hits the ground, bounces going fast. It's still got a lot of that energy, but it slows down very quickly until it reaches the top of the arc, at which point it stops going up and it's going to start falling again. So that's the timing. So this one little illustration here shows both squash and stretch and timing in it. And so we're going to try and incorporate both of those in our animation. So we're going to start off, we're going to draw the bouncing ball much like we did last week, but instead of copying the same ball, we will draw each one individually. And then we'll go through and apply squash and stretch, and then we'll go through and apply timing. And we can see what the difference is. So let's do that. So first thing we're going to need is a new document. So if you haven't saved your animation yet, go ahead and do that under File, Save. Save it as a GIF too if you'd like. And then we're going to click New. And that's going to it's going to erase everything we've done and give us a new document. I'm going to increase my pen size so it shows up better in the video. You can use whatever pen size you like for this, but for me, I think that'll make it a little easier for you to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a ball, and we're going to draw each frame of it now by hand instead of copying and moving it. And so I'm going to make it a little bigger than before, just so we can really see what's going on. So there's my ball in the first frame. So everybody, Hopefully you're able to follow along while I do this. You can always pause if you ever need to kind of get caught up or make some changes, erase something, add a new frame. You don't have to work at the same rate I do. I am trying to keep it slow, slow enough that you can follow along, but feel free to pause if you need to. All right, so I'm going to add a new frame. So I'm going to click on the Add button here. If you don't see the Add button, make sure your Frames menu is showing. So now I have this. I can see the previous ball grayed out, so I can draw near it. I can vary my my next frame. And so what we did in the first episode is we drew each frame about one ball width apart. So I'm going to do that for now, and then we'll get back to it, and you'll see the reason why we're drawing each one by hand. All right, so I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to add a frame, draw another ball moving down and to the right, add a frame, draw another. And they're getting a little less round as I go. And one last one, and this is going to be where it hits the ground. I'm just going to decide the ground is basically here. We could draw it if we want, but I think we could just know. The ground is here, and we'll show it with how the ball bounces. Now I'm going to add a frame, and now the ball is going up and to the right still. Add a frame, draw another ball, little brick-like, add a frame, and now we're going to be getting to the top of the arc here because it's not going to bounce all the way as high as it started, which would be there. So, and draw. Oh, I'm drawing two balls in one frame. No, there we go. Undo. Undo is my friend. And now I'm going to draw another ball. And add a frame. And now the ball is starting to fall again. And how far did it go down before? A little bit further. There. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Click Animate. Play. Not too bad. All right, so that's your basic ball animation. It changes size a little bit because I'm doing each one by hand and kind of eyeballing it quickly, but that's all right. The principle is the same. So we've got our ball bouncing. Now we need to go in and the first principle that we want to apply is squash and stretch. So as the ball falls, we actually want it to kind of elongate into more of an oval than a round ball. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to just undo that one and draw it more like an oval. So that kind of shows that it's moving. The next frame, again, I'm just going to redo that as try not to change the size too much, but it'll be what it'll be. All right, undo. Now you can see it's not the same thickness each time, and that's actually okay. It's gonna kind of wobble a little bit as it's going. That also shows its stretchiness. And then here we have it reaching the bottom, which also seemed to be the biggest one. And actually, because we can do this, I'm gonna add a frame in between. So I'm gonna add another frame where it's falling. and then a frame where it squashes out and flattens. Boom. And then, yeah, it's going to take off in the other direction. So now bouncing up, and now it's going to elongate this way as it bounces back up. And again, a little bit of wobble. It's getting to the top of its arc, so I'm going to start rounding it out again. And here it should be basically round as it reaches the top of the arc and it's about to start falling back down. So now we're going to start elongating it again. And we can correct a little bit of the angle here, positioning. We could have done this in the first place. We could have just drawn it elongated, but I wanted to show you what the difference is between drawing it round each time and drawing it with squash and stretch. And I think this is, oh, that was the last one. So that one actually should be squashed. We'll add one more. All right, so let's see what that looks like. That looks better. Now it just kind of gets smaller as it goes, but it doesn't keep bouncing back between large and small, so I will take it. Okay, so that is the principle of squash and stretch. So we're going to show the movement and the elasticity of our object by making it stretch out as it's falling or moving, and then squash when it stops suddenly. And you know, a real rubber ball isn't going to squash this flat probably or stretch out like this, but we're exaggerating because it's comic. We want to use that exaggeration to emphasize the movement of our object, so that it looks both more real and more playful. So we're not trying to capture exact reality. We could just use a camera and film a ball bouncing if we wanted that. What we want to capture is an idea, a principle, or a feeling, really. That's what our animations should be going for, is to kind of capture some feeling and express it. Okay, so now, if we go back to that first frame, and we step through it, the ball is still roughly one ball width apart each time. Now the ball width changes a little bit, and sometimes there's some gaps, but more or less that's what it is. So we haven't applied the principle of timing yet. So let's do that. So one of the nice things about this medium of this flipbook style animation is we can add frames anywhere we want. So if we want to slow something down, we can add more frames and smaller transitions between them. And if we want to speed it up, we can remove frames or make bigger transitions. We could use the move tool, or we could just redraw it. So I think this is good for the starting. No, it should start slow, so there should be more transitions, more frames in there. So we'll go back here and we'll add, and we want to, it's still mostly round, but it's going to be starting to get elongated. Let's add one more. Oh. That's terrible. Okay. And my terrible art won't show up as much when it's moving. Like when you one of the nice things about animation is the movement itself can cover up a lot of problems and issues. Okay, so you can see it's pretty slow at the beginning, and then it speeds up and keeps sped up. So we need to work on that. But the slow beginning is good, and then here we want it to be sped up a little bit more, maybe one frame in between. Yeah, so let's do one frame, kind of half ball's width. There. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now here it's actually going even faster, so we'll just leave it one full ball's length. And then here, maybe even a little more than one. So let's just let's grab the move tool and just move that a little bit further. All right, now it's hitting the ground, it squashes out. That's great. It's going to bounce off. We've already got it bouncing a little more than one width, so that's good. But now we want it to slow down. So let's add a frame in between these. Go back one, add a frame, and again, about half. Oops, that's the move tool. I want the pin. About half a ball's width of distance. So about half as fast as it was going. That's good. And now here there's a big jump, right? So we want to actually probably add several frames because it's slowing down, and there's a huge jump there. So let's add a frame here. And as it slows down, remember it's going to get more round again too. We don't want it to be as stretched. Let's add one more. And again, more round. And then it gets to the top of the arc. Let's add one in between there. It's going to slowly move to the right and kind of not keep rising. So one more here. This one's pretty round because it's not moving a lot. There we go. And again, we want it to start slower as it's falling. So we'll add a frame in between those. Still pretty round, but starting to elongate. Good, good. Okay. And now it's falling faster and faster. And still pretty. So here, so we go from that. That. I'm just going to move that one a little bit up so it's not completely at speed yet. And then this one is faster. Then really fast. And by really fast, I mean there's more movement between frames. Then boom, we're squashed down, and that's the last frame. All right, let's see what that looks like. So here we are. Now we've added squash and stretch to show the movement, and then we've added timing to make it more realistic in how it moves with physics. So it starts off slow, speeds up as it accelerates to the ground, it bounces fast, and then slows down again. So I think that is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. You can go ahead and tweak yours more if you need to, add frames if you need to, move frames a little bit, remove frames if you've got too many. Feel free to keep tweaking it until you're really happy with how the resulting animation looks. Because this is the test. When you view it and you actually see your animation play, that's the test of whether you're happy with it or not, or whether you want to go back and redo some pieces. So go ahead and save that if you like. So I'm going to save that as bounce. Now I've got a file I can load later. You can save it as a GIF if you want. And yeah, here's our animation. Okay. So we've got our animation done. Let's take a look at a tool we haven't really used very much in our animation so far. Now that we've saved our work, we can go ahead and create a new file. The next exercise, again, I'm going to bump up my pen size. You can, or you can leave it the way it is. Either way, it's fine. We're going to play around a little bit more with pen size in this exercise. And what I want to do is explore two things. One, just playing around, like drawing freeform. Just keep your mouse down and just see what kind of shapes you make as you just move the mouse around. Just doodle a little bit, explore, have fun. Not trying to actually make anything in particular. I'm just going to do that a few times. I'm going to clear each one. I'm not trying to save these. I'm not trying to make anything profound. I'm just trying to get used to moving the mouse around and just let it happen. Just relax. Hey, if you want to, you can try and make a picture. What can I do? Maybe that's not going to be. But you don't have to. You can just play around with the shapes. And then what I want to do is actually play around with colors some more. So we've got 8 colors in a palette that we have quick access to. We can get to any color. We can make whatever color we want. There we go. And once we've got a color, then we can work with it, play with it. And we can change the palettes. We've got a bunch of palettes to work from. I like autumn. Maybe I'll work with autumn today. Every palette is going to have black, white, and gray, and then it has 5 additional colors. Sometimes they're kind of close together, like that brown and that brown. Those look too close together for me. I probably need to work on the palettes a little bit. I haven't paid much attention to them lately. This one's nice because it's got a few different greens, but then it's got this pink too that kind of jumps out we can do something with. Alright, that's what I'll use. I'm going to just, oops. I'm going to go ahead and get a new document because I was accidentally creating frames instead of clearing. There are no huge mistakes. We can fix things. And then I said, what was it? Spring? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try the spring palette. I still got, what have I got? I've got a gray now, it looks like. And I want to just draw. What if I try and draw a bird? Can I draw a bird? Experts say maybe not, but what if I don't listen to them? Draw it anyways. And I'm just drawing again. I'm still drawing without lifting the pen. There's a wing, folded up, feathered a little bit. Alright. And eye there. Cheek patch. There. That will do. Alright, so once I've got it drawing, and again, you don't have to draw a bird or anything recognizable, you can just doodle. But once you've got a doodle that you're reasonably happy with, it doesn't have to, it can be just scribbled around, whatever. But what I do want is to make sure there are several distinct areas. So you've got lines crossing, so you've made different areas in it. And then what I want you to do is pick a palette, any palette, but then we're going to just stick to that one palette. And I'm going to actually bump my pen size up even more to kind of fill in some areas with color. So I'm going to pick that green, and I'm going to, this bird, I don't know, are there any, yeah, there's green ducks and stuff, I guess. There's green birds. And you can use a small pen for filling in detailed areas, and a big pen size for filling in other areas. But don't, I mean, why do you think Shimmy doesn't have a fill tool? Like a lot of drawing programs will have a paint bucket kind of tool that you click and it'll fill the whole area for you instantly. Why do you think that is? So when I introduced Shimmy in the first episode, I said that it is for doing sketch-based flipbook style animation. And so what we're trying to give you is tools that work more or less like drawing with a pen or pencil or crayon. And we don't want perfection here. We want it to look sketchy. So when we draw with the pen, it's not going to give us the same perfect fill as a paint bucket. Kind of drawing over the lines in some places, and you know, the fill would have filled both these areas with the same color, and I'm using two slightly different shades of green. Oops. And so it's not perfect, and that's okay. We don't necessarily need perfection. I like the way it looks with little patches of white still poking through, and little overlap between the lines, just like if we were doing this on paper. That can be its own aesthetic. So it can be its own look, its own feel, because that's what we're going for. We want to create a feeling, and when we draw right now, we want the feeling of drawing with like a crayon or something here. So there we go. Yeah. Should I do this whole thing pink here, this big chunk? Or should I do it in a different... I don't know, maybe the pink is better, like just save it for the little splash of color. Really vibrant. Here. Here. Maybe even the feet. Yeah. Just have fun. You know, just go for what kind of feeling are you trying to create with your drawing. And this one, we're not even going to worry about frames. We're just going to fill in one frame. This is just an exercise in getting your drawing muscles going. So we've got, this is something my friend Bronwyn showed me. It was an exercise that she did with a bunch of friends on New Year's on paper. But I think it's fun to do it here in Shimmy as well. There. One more there. And now, do this one. So when you have adjoining areas, try not to use, oh no. Good thing that Shimmy saves when you leave the page. I accidentally clicked on back. Keep pressing the wrong button. That's alright. Shimmy is forgiving. Some programs, if you went back, it would lose everything, but we don't want that. So it always, when you leave the page, it saves what you were doing last. The only thing we might lose is our undo. Yeah, it's coming along. And we can even bump the size of the pen up more if we want to fill in faster, but then we lose a little bit of the sketchy quality. It's alright. It's pretty good. There. Well, let's use a little bit of gray here. Oh, maybe make the pen a little smaller. All right, that's a bird. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It's real sketchy, real loose. Try doing that with your friends. You can each do a scribble, color it in. What would you do with this if you wanted to animate it? How would we do that? It'd be a lot of color fills, but it would look really cool if you did several frames like that. You could even you could do the scribble and then copy a bunch of them and color each one differently and just animate the changing colors. It's all kinds of possibilities. So save that. Once you're done, keep going and as long as you need to until you're happy with it. Save my bird. And yeah. So that's everything I've got for today. I'm just going to leave you with an exercise for next time. And what that is I want you to create an animation of walking. So what is walking? It doesn't have to be a person. It can be a person, it can be a stick figure, it can be a turtle, it can be a duck, it can be an abstract shape, as long as you can make it walk. But what I want you to do is use at least 20 frames of animation and think about how we move when we walk. So when you walk across the room, look at yourself in a mirror. Does your head stay in the same place or does it move up and down? What about your arms? What are they doing while you walk? Try and capture the feeling of walking in your animation, regardless of what you're animating. Then I'll do mine and share it at the beginning of the next episode, and we can look at some more of that. Awesome. Well, I will see you in 2 weeks, and until then, enjoy, have fun, get your friends to all do some animations together if you want, share them back and forth, and we'll keep going from here. Have a good time.